rational and productive. Anybody? No, I mean, my mother told me that being selfish and self-interested was associated with being a line-stealing, corpse-walking, backstabbing SOB. Right? And who wants to be that? More guilt, because we realize at some point in life that a lot of what we're doing is for our own self-interest. That must associate us, with Bernie Madoff. We're the same thing. So, we've got two things going on here. Capitalism is about self-interest. You can't deny it. It's just a fact. Self-interest is evil at worst, just unpleasant at best. Right? The opposite, self-sacrifice, working for society, taking care of others, being your brother's keeper, those are all virtues. Those are all good things. Capitalism doesn't have a chance. Capitalism is immediately associated with everything bad and evil. Somebody said we teach our kids to share, right? And we do, right? They're in the sandbox, and a complete stranger walks up, another kid walks up to the sandbox and says, "I want to play with your truck." And what do we as parents say? "Johnny, you got to shake." Right? And of course, Johnny knows that if at some point he figures out that if a stranger came up to you and asked you for the car keys for the day, you would say, "No way." Now, why is that? Because I think this is really psychologically interesting. Why is it that we want our kids to share, but we're not willing to? Because we're cynics. We've all become cynics. We're all self-interested. We don't like being self-interested, but we are. So we won't share. But we still want to project our idealism onto our kids. We want our kids to live the life that we would like. Like the people who say, communism is a great idea, it's just not practical. That's the cynicism. So sharing is a good idea, it's just not practical. So you kids, we want to give you the good idea, but for us adults, it's just not practical. But that's the cynicism, and that's about as good of a defense of capitalism as there is out there today. It works. It's bad. It's yucky. It's not really any good from a moral perspective, but it works. There's a famous book written in the 1980s called Two Cheers for Capitalism by Irving Kristol. Two cheers. Irving Kristol was a conservative, right? This is the right-wing thing, too. Right? How many cheers do we give something we really like? Three. Now, why wouldn't he give it third cheer? He said, look, capitalism undoubtedly produces the wealth. One cheer. Capitalism is also consistent with political freedom. We see it all over the world. Where there's political freedom, there tends to be more economic freedoms, more capitalism. Two cheers. But capitalism is all about self-interest. And that's yucky. And we don't like that. So I can't give it the third cheer. So it's not moral, it just works. And a good friend of his, who you'll see once in a while in publications, a guy named Michael Novak, also conservative, was giving a speech in Asia, and all about capitalism, the morality of capitalism. The whole speech is capitalism's great, and you guys all should be capitalist, and you should deregulate, and you should do all this stuff. The whole, this wonderful supposed defense of capitalism. The last paragraph against the end of the speech. But look, it's no paradise on earth. And he says, my friend Irving Kristol gave capitalism 2 cheers. It really only deserves 1. And why? Because it's selfish. It's self-interest. So, as long as our culture holds a morality that views virtue as associated with selflessness, views virtue as associated with self-sacrifice, and therefore views self-interest as a vice, capitalism can never succeed. And that explains why capitalism has been in decline for the last 100 years. Why we systematically, consistently move away from free markets. Because free markets are not consistent with the morality that as a culture we hold. And therefore, if we're advocates for capitalism, if we think capitalism is good, we need to rethink our morality. I think we need to rethink our morality for a lot of other reasons, but this is one good one. And this is where I think Ayn Rand is such a revolutionary. Because Ayn Rand challenges this conventional morality that everybody has accepted, almost everybody, for the last 2,000 years. Since the Greeks, nobody has challenged this notion of selflessness and self-sacrifice as moral ideals. One or two exceptions here and there. Even our founding fathers. The same founding fathers that said that we each have an inalienable right to pursue our own happiness, when it came to actually explicit morality, contradicted that. And said, no, the real moral ideal is to live for other people. Even they, while geniuses and revolutionaries and changed the world in terms of political philosophy, were conventional when it came to morality. Ayn Rand says no. She says, that morality doesn't make any sense. It's anti-human life. It's evil. It says your life is meaningless. That your life is there only to serve others, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's the state, whether it's God, whoever. It's to serve others. That's the meaning of a selfless morality. But your life is yours. It cannot be anybody else's. And she articulates a new morality. A morality of rational self-interest. A morality that states that your life is yours and your moral responsibility. Your moral responsibility is to make your life the best life that it can be. That you have one shot at this. And the whole purpose of morality is to figure out, and this is not easy, to figure out what is really consistently in your self-interest over the span of your life. What does it really make sense for you to do? What does it really mean to be selfish? To think about self first. Think about it. Figure it out. I always tell people that being selfish is really, really, really hard work. Because what you feel like doing is not always what's good for you. So your desires are not always consistent. Sometimes they are, but they're not always consistent with what's right and good and going to lead to a better, happier life. What seems like an easy path in the short term might be a disastrous path in the long term. That requires figuring out. It's not easy. And that the lying, cheating, stealing stuff just doesn't work. It doesn't work for you. It just doesn't make any sense. I like the Bernie Madoff example, because everybody thinks Bernie Madoff was it's obvious, right? He was selfish. He was thinking only of himself. Right? He stole all this money. Everybody know who Bernie Madoff is? Pyramid scheme, stole, $50 billion, kind of disappeared. And, was he thinking just of himself? Was this the problem that Bernie Madoff had? He sat down one day at his desk and he said, how can I make my life the best life that it could be? I want to be really, really happy. And the way to do that is to steal money from my best friends, because most of the money he took was from his friends. To lie to my family constantly, and to live in constant fear of being caught. That is a recipe for a happy life. I mean, you laugh, right? But also, people laugh, but then they immediately associate selfishness with Bernie Madoff. No, the problem with Bernie Madoff is that he didn't sit down and think about what was good for his life. He didn't do the first part of that. He didn't think. He didn't think. He emoted. He wanted some money at some point. He just took it. He didn't think about the consequences. He didn't play it out. He didn't think about what was good.